minus 17 degrees Celsius and covered in snow. 6 poor puppies tremble and cry loudly calling for their mother. The wind howled like a banshee, tearing through the skeletal branches of the ancient oak trees that lined the edge of Martha's property. Snow, relentless and unforgiving, piled high against the weathered walls of her farmhouse, a solitary sentinel against the vast white expanse of rural Maine. Inside, a fire crackled in the hearth, casting flickering shadows across the worn, floral patterns of the rug. Martha, a woman weathered by time and solitude, sat by the window, her gaze lost in the swirling snow. Her husband, John, had passed 2 winters ago, leaving a silence in the house that even the crackling fire couldn't fill. Her children, grown with families of their own, lived miles away, their visits becoming less frequent with each passing year. Days melted into one another, marked only by the rising and setting sun, the chores of the farm, and the gnawing ache of loneliness that settled deep in her bones. This particular morning, however, something stirred within Martha, a prickle of unease that nudged her from her reverie. The wind seemed to carry a faint, desperate sound, a whimpering that cut through the silence of the snow-covered landscape. Bundling herself in her warmest coat and scarf, she ventured out into the biting cold, her boots crunching on the frozen ground. The sound led her to the old barn, its roof heavy with snow. As she approached, the whimpering grew louder, a chorus of tiny voices that tugged at her heartstrings. Pushing open the creaking door, she stepped into the dimly lit interior, her breath misting in the frigid air. There, nestled beneath a pile of hay, she found them 6 tiny puppies, their eyes barely open, shivering uncontrollability and crying out for their mother. Their fur, a patchwork of browns and blacks, was matted with snow. They were so small, so vulnerable, their tiny bodies trembling in the bitter cold. Martha's heart ached at the sight. How could anyone abandon such innocent creatures to the mercy of this harsh winter? Without hesitation, she scooped them up, one by one, cradling them close to her body, seeking to share her warmth with them. Their cries softened as they felt the heat of her touch, their tiny bodies snuggling closer. A fierce protectiveness surged within Martha, a feeling she hadn't experienced since her children were young. Trudging back to the house, the puppies nestled safely in her arms. Martha felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. These tiny creatures, abandoned and alone, had somehow found their way to her. Perhaps, just perhaps, they were the answer to the emptiness that had consumed her for so long. Back in the warmth of the farmhouse, Martha gently placed the puppies on a soft blanket near the fireplace. Their whimpers had subsided, replaced by soft, rhythmic breathing as they huddled together for warmth. Martha knelt beside them, her heart swelling with a mixture of pity and determination. These tiny creatures were now her responsibility, and she vowed to do everything in her power to protect them. Her first concern was to warm them up. She fetched a hot water bottle, wrapping it in a towel and placing it gently amongst the puppies. Then, she prepared a makeshift bed for them in a cardboard box lined with old towels and blankets. As they settled into their cozy nest, Martha's thoughts turned to their next meal. They were clearly too young to be weaned, but she had no idea where to find a nursing mother dog. Remembering a conversation with her neighbor, Sarah, about a new litter of kittens, Martha decided to seek her advice. Sarah, a kind-hearted woman with a love for all animals, lived a short distance down the road. Bundling up once again, Martha carefully placed the puppies back in the box and carried them out to her old pickup truck. The roads were treacherous, but Martha navigated them with the cautious expertise of a lifelong resident. Upon reaching Sarah's cozy cottage, she was greeted with a warm smile and a pot of freshly brewed coffee. After explaining the situation, Martha was relieved to find that Sarah had some kitten milk replacer formula on hand. "These little ones need to eat every few hours," Sarah explained, demonstrating how to prepare the formula and feed it to the puppies with a small syringe. "They're lucky you found them, Martha. Another hour out in that cold, and they wouldn't have made it." Armed with the formula and Sarah's advice, Martha returned home with renewed determination. She spent the rest of the day feeding the puppies, cleaning them, and keeping them warm. As she watched them suckle eagerly from the syringe, their tiny tails wagging weakly, a sense of purpose settled over her. These vulnerable creatures needed her, and in caring for them, she found a renewed sense of purpose in her own life. By nightfall, the puppies were noticeably more alert, their cries stronger, their movements more vigorous. Martha, exhausted but content, watched them sleep peacefully in their makeshift bed. The silence in the house no longer felt empty. It was filled with the soft sounds of their breathing, a symphony of life that warmed her heart. The days that followed were a blur of activity. Martha, fueled by a newfound purpose, dedicated herself to the care of the 6 tiny lives that had stumbled into hers. The puppies, initially nameless bundles of fur, began to develop distinct personalities, each demanding her attention in their own unique way. There was Scout, the largest and most adventurous of the bunch, always the first to explore new surroundings. Then there was Patches, the smallest and most timid, who preferred to snuggle close to Martha for warmth and comfort. Buttercup, with her playful nips and boundless energy, kept Martha on her toes. Shadow, with his sleek black coat, was the quiet observer, content to watch the world from a safe distance. Molly, the gentlest of the litter, seemed to sense Martha's moods, offering a comforting presence whenever she felt overwhelmed. And finally, there was Rusty, the mischievous one, always getting into trouble and testing Martha's patience. The farmhouse, once filled with silence, now echoed with the sounds of puppyhood, playful yelps, contented sighs, and the pitter-patter of tiny paws on the wooden floor. Martha found herself smiling more often, her heart lighter than it had been in years. The puppies, in their innocence and unconditional love, had chipped away at the wall of grief that had surrounded her, allowing a glimmer of joy to seep back into her life. However, caring for 6 puppies was no easy task. Sleepless nights were filled with the constant demands of feeding, cleaning, and comforting. Martha's days were consumed with laundry, trips to the feed store for puppy food, and endless rounds of playtime. The financial strain of caring for the growing pups began to weigh on her, but she refused to let it dampen her spirits. She would find a way, she told herself, just as she had always found a way. One evening, as Martha sat by the fire watching the puppies tumble over each other in a playful frenzy, a wave of exhaustion washed over her. She realized she couldn't do this alone. She needed help, not just with the practicalities of caring for the puppies, but also with the emotional weight of her newfound responsibility. With a sigh, she reached for the phone, her fingers hovering over the buttons. It was time to call her daughter, Emily. It had been months since they last spoke, and Martha knew Emily would have concerns about her taking on such a challenge. But as she listened to the cheerful sounds of the puppies playing at her feet, Martha knew she had made the right decision. These little creatures had brought life back into her home, and she was determined to give them the best possible start in life, even if it meant reaching out for help. The phone call to Emily was a mixture of relief and apprehension. Emily, ever the worrier, expressed concern about her mother taking on so much responsibility, but Martha could hear the underlying pride in her daughter's voice. They agreed that Emily and her family would visit the following weekend, bringing much-needed supplies and a welcome dose of familial warmth. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. The day after the phone call, the local radio crackled with warnings of an impending blizzard, the worst in decades. A sense of foreboding settled over Martha as she listened to the grim forecast. She knew she had to prepare, not just for herself, but for the 6 vulnerable lives now depending on her. The first priority was securing the puppies' shelter. The cardboard box, while cozy, wouldn't withstand the onslaught of snow and wind. Martha, resourceful as ever, decided to move them into the old laundry room off the kitchen. It was small and drafty, but it offered more protection than the exposed barn. She spent the day reinforcing the windows, piling blankets against the door, and creating a warm nest for the puppies with old quilts and pillows. Next, she ventured out to the town store, braving the already worsening conditions. The shelves were nearly bare, picked clean by panicked shoppers, but Martha managed to secure enough puppy food, milk replacer, and other essentials to last them through the storm. Back at the farmhouse, she stocked the pantry, filled the woodpile, and made sure the generator was in working order. As dusk fell, the first flakes of snow began to fall, gentle at first, then quickly intensifying into a swirling white curtain. The wind howled, rattling the windows and shaking the old farmhouse to its core. Inside, Martha huddled with the puppies in the laundry room, the warmth of their bodies a comforting counterpoint to the raging storm outside. The blizzard raged for 3 days, an unrelenting assault of snow and wind that cut off the farmhouse from the outside world. The power went out on the first night, plunging them into darkness, but Martha remained calm, relying on the wood stove for heat and candles for light. She fed the puppies by the flickering candlelight, their eager suckling a testament to their resilience. During those long, isolated days, a profound shift occurred within Martha. The fear and uncertainty were still there, but they were overshadowed by a fierce determination to protect these vulnerable creatures. She sang them old lullabies, told them stories of her childhood, and shared her hopes and dreams for their future. In their presence, she found a strength she never knew she possessed, a mother's instinct to nurture and protect, even in the face of adversity. The storm finally subsided on the 4th day, leaving behind an eerie silence and a world transformed into a glistening white wonderland. The sun, a pale disk in the cloudless sky, cast long shadows across the snowdrifts that reached almost to the windows of the farmhouse. Martha, weary but relieved, emerged from the laundry room with the puppies in her arms. The sight that greeted her was both breathtaking and daunting. The familiar landscape was unrecognizable, buried under a thick blanket of snow. The barn was barely visible, its roof almost completely submerged. The old oak trees, their branches heavy with snow, bowed towards the ground like weary giants. Her immediate concern was clearing a path to the main road. Armed with a shovel, she began the arduous task of digging through the drifts, the puppies frolicking around her feet, their playful barks echoing in the crisp air. It took hours of backbreaking work, but finally, she managed to create a narrow passageway, just wide enough for her old pickup truck. With the road accessible, Martha's thoughts turned to replenishing their dwindling supplies. The trip to town was a slow and cautious one, the roads still icy and treacherous. The town itself was slowly coming back to life, with residents digging out from the blizzard and sharing stories of survival. At the store, Martha was greeted with warm smiles and offers of help. News of her heroic efforts during the storm had spread through the community, and she found herself the unexpected recipient of gratitude and admiration. Back at the farmhouse, a new challenge awaited her. While clearing the snow from the front porch, she discovered a note attached to the door. It was from the local social services, informing her that a caseworker would be visiting to assess her living conditions and her ability to care for the puppies. A wave of anxiety washed over Martha. She had always been fiercely independent, and the thought of someone scrutinizing her life filled her with unease. The caseworker, a young woman named Sarah, not to be confused with her neighbor, arrived the next day. She was polite and professional, but Martha couldn't shake off the feeling of being judged. Sarah inspected the farmhouse, inquired about Martha's finances, and observed her interactions with the puppies. Martha, despite her nervousness, answered all the questions honestly, her love for the puppies evident in every word and gesture. As Sarah was about to leave, something unexpected happened. Patches, the smallest and most timid of the puppies, waddled over to Sarah and placed a tiny paw on her shoe, looking up at her with big, trusting eyes. A smile softened Sarah's features, and Martha saw a flicker of understanding in her gaze. "You've done a wonderful job with these puppies, Mrs. Peterson," Sarah said, her voice warm and genuine. "They're clearly thriving under your care. I'll be submitting a positive report, and I'll also be happy to help you find suitable homes for them when they're old enough." Relief washed over Martha, followed by a pang of sadness. The thought of parting with the puppies was already a bittersweet ache in her heart. With the immediate crisis averted and the puppies thriving, Martha turned her attention to the daunting task of finding them suitable homes. She knew she couldn't keep all 6. The farmhouse was simply too small, and her resources were limited. Besides, She wanted each puppy to have a loving family and a place to call their own. Word of the rescued puppies had spread throughout the small town, and soon, Martha was inundated with calls and visits from potential adopters. She met with each family, carefully assessing their homes, lifestyles, and motivations. She wanted to ensure that each puppy would be placed in a loving and responsible environment where they would be cherished and well cared for. The first to be adopted was Scout, the adventurous one. He found his perfect match in a young couple, avid hikers and nature lovers, who lived in a spacious house with a large backyard. Scout, with his boundless energy and love for exploration, would thrive in their active lifestyle. Next was Patches, the timid one, a kind elderly lady whose beloved dog had recently passed away, fell in love with Patches at first sight. She offered him a quiet home filled with cozy corners and gentle companionship, the perfect environment for his shy nature. Buttercup, the energetic one, was chosen by a family with 3 young children. Her playful spirit and boundless energy would be a perfect fit for their lively household, and the children were already smitten with her. Shadow, the observer, found his home with a retired professor who lived a solitary life surrounded by books and quiet contemplation. Shadow, with his calm demeanor and love for peaceful observation, would be the perfect companion for his introspective new owner. Molly, the gentle soul, was adopted by a family with a teenage daughter who had been struggling with anxiety. Molly's calming presence and intuitive understanding would provide the girl with much-needed emotional support and companionship. That left Rusty, the mischievous one. Martha had a harder time finding the right home for him. His playful antics and tendency to get into trouble had intimidated some potential adopters. But then, a young boy with a mischievous glint in his eyes and a love for adventure came along. He saw Rusty's potential for fun and companionship, and the connection between them was instant. With each adoption, Martha felt a mix of joy and sadness. She was happy that the puppies were finding loving homes, but the thought of them leaving created a void in her heart. She had grown so attached to them, and their presence had filled her life with so much joy and purpose. The day finally came when the last of the puppies, Rusty, was collected by his new family. Martha stood on the porch, waving goodbye as the car disappeared down the snow-dusted road, a lump forming in her throat. The farmhouse, once filled with the joyful chaos of 6 playful puppies, now felt eerily quiet. A wave of sadness washed over her, a sense of loss that echoed the emptiness she had felt after John's passing. She wandered through the rooms, her hand trailing along the furniture, each object holding a memory of the puppies: a chewed slipper, a misplaced toy, a muddy paw print on the rug. She missed their playful barks, their warm furry bodies snuggled against her, the unconditional love that shone in their eyes. The silence was deafening. The house felt too big, and the days stretched out before her, empty and devoid of purpose. But as she sat by the fire that evening, a different feeling began to emerge, a sense of gratitude. She thought of the joy she had witnessed in the eyes of the families who adopted the puppies, the children's laughter as they welcomed their new furry friends, the elderly lady's gentle touch as she cradled Patches in her arms. She realized that the puppies had not only brought joy and purpose into her life, but had also touched the lives of others, creating a ripple effect of love and connection. And even though they were no longer physically present, the memories of their time together would forever remain, a warm glow in her heart. Martha also recognized a newfound strength within herself. She had faced challenges, overcome obstacles, and opened her heart to love and loss once again. The experience had rekindled a sense of purpose and resilience she thought she had lost. The next morning, Martha woke with a renewed sense of determination. The farmhouse might be quiet, but it was no longer empty. It was filled with memories, with the echoes of laughter and playful barks, with the warmth of love shared. And Martha knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in her life, a chapter filled with possibilities and new beginnings. She decided to volunteer at the local animal shelter, offering her time and experience to care for other animals in need. She also reconnected with old friends, joined a book club, and started taking painting classes, activities she had long neglected. The puppies had been a catalyst, a reminder that life was precious and that even in the face of loss, there was always the potential for growth and renewal. And as she looked out at the snow-covered landscape, a smile touched her lips. The winter might be harsh, but spring was on its way, bringing with it the promise of new life and new beginnings. Spring arrived, painting the landscape with vibrant hues of green and gold. The snowdrifts retreated, revealing the lush meadows and blossoming trees that had been hidden for months. The air was filled with the songs of birds, the buzzing of bees, and the gentle murmur of a nearby stream. Martha, her spirit renewed, embraced the season with open arms. She spent her days tending to her garden, planting seeds of hope and nurturing them with the same love and care she had given the puppies. The farmhouse, once a symbol of loneliness, now felt like a sanctuary, a place of peace and tranquility. Her volunteer work at the animal shelter brought her immense joy. She found solace in caring for the abandoned animals, each one a reminder of the resilience of the spirit and the power of compassion. She shared her experiences with the other volunteers, her stories of the 6 rescued puppies becoming a source of inspiration and hope. One sunny afternoon, while working at the shelter, Martha received a surprise visit. It was Emily, her daughter, accompanied by her husband and 2 young children. They had come to see how she was doing and to bring her news of the puppies. "They're all doing wonderfully, Mom," Emily reported, her eyes sparkling with joy. Scout is hiking trails with his new owners. Patches is snuggled up on the couch with his elderly companion. And Buttercup is the queen bee of her new household. Martha listened with a smile, her heart swelling with pride. She had known, deep down, that the puppies were in good hands, but hearing the confirmation brought her immense comfort. "And what about Shadow, Molly, and Rusty?" she asked, eager for more details. "Shadow is the perfect library companion for his professor," Emily continued. "Molly is helping her new friend overcome her anxiety, and Rusty, well, Rusty is keeping his new family on their toes, just like he did with you." They spent the afternoon sharing stories and laughter, the bond between them strengthened by the shared experience of caring for the puppies. As they were leaving, Emily's youngest child, a little girl named Lily, tugged on Martha's hand. "Grandma," she whispered, "can we come back and visit you and the puppies again?" Martha knelt down, her eyes meeting Lily's. "The puppies have all found new homes, sweetheart," she explained gently, "but you're always welcome to visit me here." Lily's face fell for a moment, but then a smile lit up her eyes. "Okay," she said, "but can we get a new puppy?" Martha chuckled, her heart filled with warmth. "Maybe one day, sweetheart," she replied, "but for now we have each other." As she watched them drive away, Martha felt a sense of contentment she hadn't experienced in years. The puppies had come into her life like a winter storm, bringing chaos and challenges. But they had also brought love, purpose, and a renewed sense of hope. And as she looked out at the blossoming landscape, she knew that spring had truly arrived, not just in the world around her, but within her heart as well.